I'm Kim. I'm a Guild member, as you all know, and some of you are Guild members and some of you are not. And we're welcoming to everybody who's here. So thanks for joining today. And I really appreciate being part of today's special session in a series that we have called Pathways to Conscious Leadership. And today we have Dr. Rick Chaffee talking about his personal journey to conscious leadership, and he's entitled Living at Two Levels Simultaneously, Non-duality and Conscious Leadership. So without further ado, Rick, I'll turn it over to you.
So it's an honor to be here. To give you a taste of what this is about, William and I had a conversation last week. It was such a lovely conversation, and and it occurred because it took me 2 days to overcome the suffering that I experienced from having the Baltimore Ravens lose last weekend to the Kansas City Chiefs. They were at home, they were favored. They had the number one offense and the number one, or one of the number one offenses and defenses. It was an historic team that they had put together, and everybody was talking about them in the Super Bowl, and suddenly the season is over, and it took me 2 days to recover from that. The attachment was so real, and as I was discussing this with William, we started looking at how do we do sports, or how do we do stuff like this in a way that is somehow acknowledges the two levels at which we are living. So how do you not be attached and at the same time fully participate? And so we began to talk about how would an athlete do this? Because I have a history as being an athlete. And there's a way to wholeheartedly engage in an activity. It can be sport, it can be tennis, it can be a card game, it can be playing chess with your son, in a way that in which you play as if it matters. And yet, on the other hand, you know it doesn't. That you play, that you do whatever you do wholeheartedly, as if it truly matters, knowing that at another level, it doesn't. There's something about living at these two levels simultaneously that's so beautiful, because it's on the one hand, living at the level of the absolute and living at the level of the relative simultaneously. And that's what this piece is about today. And the level of the relative is important, and we talk about it a lot, and sometimes we move back and forth talking about the relative and talking about the absolute, and sometimes we mix the two of them up. And so a clarity about the absolute level and the level of the relative is so important. And so most of the focus will be me pointing towards something that we know at some level, this level of the absolute, and living at the level of the relative while knowing that the level of the absolute is primary, the level of the relative is secondary. So I just want to do a few-minute meditation. So I'd like you to notice your screen for a second, the screen in the room. Notice how your attention has moved out to perceive the screen and the room. And now let your eyes go soft and become unfocused and allow your attention to withdraw back into its source. It's a beautiful way in which we disentangle awareness from that which we are aware of. So much of meditation is an experiential investigation in which we recognize that we are the knower of our human experience. We perceive our thoughts. We perceive our body as bodily sensations and as an image when we see it in the mirror or look down at our torso and our legs. And we perceive the world. The body belongs to the world. Our mind belongs to the world. Our mind is our human experience. It's perceived by something. And it's something we don't know what it is. We've been told by culture that awareness is located in the brain, that it's an emergent property of matter, namely the brain. And yet, there's no evidence for it. In fact, in the world of science, it's known as the hard problem of consciousness, where science does not know what to make of consciousness. And there's just this lovely debates that are taking place in that field. Nobody knows what consciousness is, but we know it's of a totally different realm than the objects that it perceives. Thoughts have a beginning and an end. Awareness simply is. Thoughts are in time, they come and go, but awareness simply is. It never comes and goes. There's never been a moment in which this aware presence that we are was not present. We've never had an experience that did not include this aware presence that we are. No one has ever had an experience that did not include the presence of awareness. It's as if we are the unchanging awareness of ever-changing things. Our thoughts come and go. Our bodily sensations and feelings come and go. They evolve. Our experience of the world comes and goes. But this aware presence, this that we call I, never comes and goes. It is aware of the waking state during the day. It is aware of our dreams at night when we're asleep. It's aware of the deep sleep state when memory and mind are turned off. There is something that it's the same aware presence that was witnessing the experience of us as a child, as a teen, as a young adult, whatever age we happen to be. It's that same aware, unchanging presence that is welcoming the totality of our human experience at every moment. So just rest as your attention withdraws from the objects of perception, from the thoughts, from the bodily sensations and sense perceptions and sounds, as it withdraws back into its source. And just rest. At this extraordinary, unfathomable I that we are. In Sanskrit, this experience is called Sat-Chit-Ananda. Sat is being. Chit is the awareness of being. And Ananda is the bliss, the peace, the joy of awareness knowing itself. The knowing of itself as infinite, open, welcoming, self-aware being. And there is the joy that arises in this mystery awareness, knowing itself. It's so similar. Sat-Chit-Ananda is so similar to the Christian tradition of the Father, the Godhead, the knowing of the Godhead by the Son, and the joy and the peace that is the knowing and the loving of the Father by the Son. This experience of non-duality, of the source that gives rise to everything and everyone, to this possibility. Nobody knows. But this talk is about an experiential investigation into the extraordinary possibility that this awareness that we are is the underlying oneness of everything and everyone. There are these moments in a piece of music that take us beyond the music, don't they? That takes us to something it's like there is a zero duration gap in which there is a flash of recognition of something that we recognize as more real than the regular experience of the day. That there are these glimpses of something that seems to be absolute. That's a recognition of what we truly are. Some people would describe it as, these are moments when we see the face of God. Or these are moments when we know our original face before our parents were ever born. You know, there are these, and so that's what this is about. This is about the ode to joy that arises when our true self recognizes itself. We recognize it so often in, when we're in an airport, when we're in an airport and people we don't even know are getting off a plane, and you see a little child run into its mother's arms and they hug each other, and you don't know them, and we're taken to tears there's this experience of love, and we know who they are. We know them as love. We know them as our very own self. Love is the experience of our essential oneness. It's like having your child in your lap and it leans back into you. And that child, when it leans back into you and you smell the back of their head and the back of their ears, and there's no you and child anymore. There is only love present. Love is the experience of our essential oneness. We have the glimpse of the absolute in those moments. We have a glimpse of our true nature, of who we actually are. And when we're taken to that place that we recognize, I would describe it as, I think Rupert Spira just used this language. He says, love is the experience of our essential oneness with beings, but beauty is the experience of our essential oneness with objects. Both of them take us to our true nature. Both of them take us to something that we know, that we only get a glimpse of very often, but somehow we know it's more real than the level of the relative. And so what I'm doing here in this presentation is to keep pointing towards the joy of awareness knowing itself, the absolute knowing itself, the source knowing itself, and celebrating itself and loving itself, and that we are that. So in my own case, like for many of you, we were given recipes for happiness and peace, weren't we? And as parents too, we say, what we really want for our children more than anything in the world is for them to be happy, right? So what we seek is this happiness and peace. And the recipes that we've been given by culture, by society, we found wanting at some point in our life, didn't we? It was as if there was this suffering. I was this suffering. I mean, I had these acknowledgments for my body as a world-class athlete. I had acknowledgement for my mind as a PhD. I had acknowledgement for myself as in senior management in a nonprofit organization, and of creating my own business, and of having a loving wife, and of having 3 beautiful children. And I was absolutely miserable. I was suffering. And it was the reality telling me, it was the life telling me, you misunderstand what this life is about. You need to change your understanding. You have to change your thinking. And at the age of 50, I went back home broken. My marriage had broken up. I was unemployed. I had onset of asthma, serious late onset of asthma that my mother had died from. And I went home to die, to be with my father. My cousin, who is on this call, took me in actually for a week or so before I went to live with my father. I went back to Rutland, Vermont, left for Rutland, Vermont as an Olympic athlete. I came back as a broken, unemployed, divorced young man, well, middle-aged man, with all the humility of went home to die. And it was a gift to go home to die before I died. And at some point in that misery, and obviously I was successful in a lot of areas, so there were moments of joy and success, obviously, from ski racing, from celebrating becoming of graduating with various degrees, etc., and being apparently successful in a number of jobs. But the default position was depression. It would always go back. There would be outbreaks of joy followed by the default of depression. Until one day I met my teacher. And think about meeting your own teachers, or the ones that have spoken to you in a way that you recognized they're telling me something so different than what I had been taught. And yet I recognized it as that I've always known that at some level. At some level, I have known this. So let me read you what this poetic few lines of my teacher and how I lit up when I heard it, because there was this recognition. There is a deep intuition in us that there is but one single reality. It's an intuition that gives rise to religion, that drives physicists to seek it in a unifying theory, and that compels artists to express its beauty. Its implications reach deeply into every aspect of our lives, for it suggests that this consciousness inside is divine, and that our consciousness is the very consciousness in others. That's so beautiful, isn't it? It just resonated with something in me that I said, yes, yes, I need to know more. And immediately my mind came in and said, oh, how is that possible? How is that possible? It's absurd. No one has, I've never heard that before. And yet there is this beautiful metaphor that Bernardo Kastrup gave to Rupert Spira. And it goes like this. Imagine a river. So there's this river that's made of water, right? Many of you have probably heard this. This river that's made of water, and this river and its water is consciousness. And it is the one consciousness, the knower, the source. And in that river, we notice that there are eddies, there are whirlpools. The whirlpools are just made of water, but they're an individualization of that river. And that we as humans, in a way, a metaphor would be the human is a temporary localization of infinite aware being. What a beautiful statement by Rupert Spira, that the human is this localization of infinite aware being. It's made of nothing but consciousness. It's made of nothing but water. It is the absolute, but an individualization and localization of it. And when the whirlpool dissolves, nothing happens, nothing changes. The essence at the absolute level never changes. It's all and has always been water. It is all and has always been this presence. And for me, something profoundly shifted. And there was this meditation that he had. I remember at a retreat, this meditation. He began the meditation like this. Just be with me with this meditation. So as you be still, and your attention that has been outward withdraws back to its source. Be open to the possibility that this aware presence that is observing the thoughts, bodily sensations, and sense perceptions, that awareness is divine, is God's very awareness. Don't ever forget that. Because if you do that, then you're in perfect meditation no matter what else is happening. The body could be agitated, the mind could be frustrated. But if you are open to that extraordinary possibility that the witness of these thoughts and feelings, the knower of your human experience, is God's very awareness that never comes and goes, that is never damaged by anything that is experienced by that body-mind. Don't ever forget that. It's so easy to do, so never forget it. And I began to live from that openness, that extraordinary possibility. And at a certain moment, much like in that song, The Ode to Joy, when it took us beyond the pleasantness of the notes to something extraordinary, I was struck by something that recognized I didn't see anything, but something shifted in me in which depression disappeared. The fear of absolute disappearance disappeared. It's like what seems to happen with people who have a near-death experience, that they're no longer afraid of death. Something profoundly shifted because the belief and feeling of being a separate entity disappeared in that moment. Of course, the habitual thoughts, we have habits of thoughts from living. I had lived 55 years believing to be a separate entity and having thoughts that were based on that. And I had feelings that were based on that understanding. And I had the way of relating based on that understanding. And I had ways of acting that were based on that understanding that needed to gradually change from this new extraordinary possibility. And it became the stabilization process for being able to live from that. As he said, its implications run deeply into every aspect of our lives. So that was the non-dual teaching that I was introduced to that ended years of suffering. And so what I'm doing in this talk is celebrating the Ode to Joy of being this extraordinary, aware, and mysterious presence that is unfathomable to the human mind. At least that's my experience. That's my journey. That we know we're fine at some level of the absolute, and yet at the level of the relative of our body-mind, we may be really suffering from pain, from our mind may be going nuts, and yet we can, as this presence, we can put our arms around this troubled mind and aching and exhausted body and hold it lightly, gently in the healing arms of our present moment awareness. Our first responsibility is to this body and mind, isn't it? It's our children. It's like our children. It's our most important child, because this body mind that we have, that awareness cares for, is the vehicle through which we contribute and we celebrate. And so our first responsibility in life is to take care of this body mind. And yet we know what is primary and what is secondary. So think for a moment about the most important teacher or teachers in your life. And what it's like when you heard some of these words, such as I heard, that evoke this extraordinary joy, where you recognized that what they were saying was true. Whether it was Byron Katie, or Gangaji, or Ramana Maharshi, or Nisargadatta, Rupert Spira, Francis Lucille, Jean Klein, or Adyashanti, whoever. Just think to the joy that you experience when you heard those words that took you to the source, to the absolute. I've been pointing towards something that you all know. I can see it in the smiles, in your smiles. That you've been living your life on two levels simultaneously. That there is a knowing. It's what the guild is about in my mind. It's a place I feel at home, because there is this sense I have from being with you all that I'm interacting with something profound and divine. So beautiful.
Rick, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
As you reach this point of interconnectedness, of knowing that what you were seeking outside was within, how did that evolve you into the next years of your life and into this space where you would perceive conscious leadership?
For my marriage, my second marriage, and with my children, especially in my marriage, when I discovered that happiness and peace was my natural state, that I no longer put the burden of my happiness on my spouse. It freed her to just be her. She was there as someone to celebrate my joy with. It was an extraordinary shift. Because I know my second marriage wouldn't have made it had I not had this terrible suffering and belief to be a separate entity been dissolved, been addressed. So And then with my students, it's so, about, I was just telling Arlene, who's uh, my boss at Union Institute and University. She's been on with this today. I was telling her how 10 years ago, um, I was asked to teach online rather than face to face. I'd been teaching face to face for years and was always uncomfortable with it as an introvert. I was feeling like my reputation as a good teacher was on the line every time I taught. It was uncomfortable. And then teaching, I was told that I had to teach students from all over the country, not just up in Vermont. And I discovered something extraordinary, and that was that after this revelation that happened in the year 2000, that words would come to me in my response to students online that were so beautiful. They seemed to come out of nowhere. We would have a reading and I have a question and the students would respond to my question. And then because I could write it, because I wasn't up in front of them like I am in front of you all right now, I discovered that this understanding found words appropriate to that individual person. And I would read them back and I'd go, where did that come from? It's so beautiful. It would bring me to tears, some of the stuff that came out of me in my writing. So it was such a gift to my teaching. I fell in love with my students. They shared with me stuff that they would never have shared probably in a classroom setting. There was an intimacy there. So in my work, with my students, there was this hunger for addressing I was teaching leadership and I was teaching negotiation and conflict resolution as a leadership skill. And these students, because leadership has to address the most important aspects of your life. How do I deal with conflict with my wife and my teenage daughter and with the people at work? And these were with police officers and firefighters. And these were people who had been in the workplace a long time and had children of their own and were in survival mode. And we get to interact with each other from this place of love. It was my joy. It was just such. I actually told. I was in some meetings with Kim because he was one of the directors in the graduate program, with Arlene, and I would say I was so in love with these students that I would do this for nothing. It was such a joy to teach from this place of coming from the absolute and letting the words find me appropriate for that specific student. The bottom of the U curve in U theory, right? And there was this joy that would happen. And I said I would do this for nothing. Well, I got a chance to test that out in August. The university started going under. I taught from August till December without being paid because they couldn't make payroll. I got to know that I was truly teaching from my joy, from a causeless joy, because I was constantly pointing to the absolute, and they recognized it. And there was this hunger in these students for this spiritual aspect that is part of our DNA. There was this hunger to nurture this spiritual presence in people that I was responding to. And that was my joy and their joy as well. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but yeah. And coming to the guild, because I was in a university in which it was considered somehow inappropriate to speak about this stuff. And yet the students were hungering for it. In fact, I had a presentation on Howard Thurman. I said to and it went actually to the academic dean. I had proposed a presentation about Howard Thurman as a new way of looking at race, diversity, equity, and inclusion that acknowledged the current approach, which is about diversity and differences, etc., but which recognized by Howard Thurman was not enough. We needed to transcend and include the current model, that we needed to recognize the essential oneness from which this beautiful diversity emerged. Because until we did that, we would just be moving around who is oppressing whom. Until we understand, and so he would say, he said to his friend, he had this mentee that he was working with. His name was Martin Earl Pfluger. I think if any of you ever heard of him, he's an extraordinary and gifted person in that movement. And he had just gotten his PhD, and he asked Howard Thurman, his mentor, what should I do with my life now? And Howard said, because he's been really interested in DEI, diversity and inclusion, equity and inclusion. And Howard said to him, with a smile on his face, he said, all social issues are temporary and brief. Go deep. And what he was meaning was, until you discover inside yourself what Howard Thurman had to discover, because Howard Thurman grew up in Daytona Beach, Florida, just a couple of miles south of where I live. He was born in, I think, right at the turn of the century, deep in the South, in Jim Crow South, where only 3 areas of Daytona Beach in which blacks could live. There were only 3 high schools that black could go to in this state. He was so enraged by being nothing, being seen as nothing in his community, in his culture, and being less than nothing, seen as a problem, that there was this rage in him that he recognized that unless he addressed that rage, he would not live very long, that he would be killed. And so he needed to find that place within him that was untouched by what he called the vicissitudes of life, to find that place inside that was undamaged, undisturbable, because if he could not find that place, his life was over. And when he found that place inside, not only did he find a place from which he could continue his work without burning out, but he also discovered who the others were. Because it was like, he described it like this: in going deep, it is as if I went down under the other and came up in them and knew them as myself. It was in that moment that in knowing who he was, he knew who the other was, and he knew who God was. There is that saying by some Sufi teacher from, I think, the 12th century. You are not you. You have never been you. You are him. When you know yourself, when you know awareness, you know yourself. When you know awareness, you know the other. When you know awareness, you know a reality. When you know awareness, you know the universe. And when you know awareness, you know God. It's Atman is Brahman in Indian culture, in the Hindu culture. This ordinary awareness, hearing these words right now, is that whirlpool, that eddy. That eddy. And when you know that eddy, when you know water, then you know the absolute. You know Brahman. You know God. You know the Father. And there's this experience when you know that you know Jesus and you know the Holy Spirit. I love, in John's Gospel, they point to that very thing of, it is the I am statements are so beautiful. When you know I am, you know Jesus. When you know I am, you know the Father. When you know I am, you know the joy of the Holy Spirit. You know the joy, the wisdom, and a peace that's beyond all understanding, really a peace that's beyond the mind. You know the absolute. And when you live from that place, something is profoundly different. And that was my experience. Thanks, Aaron. I love you. I love you all. It's so beautiful. I'm so grateful for you, Kim. At the very time, this is how serendipity works, living like this. At the very time that I was losing the beauty of my teaching, Kim invited me to join this community, to fill this hole that would have been there, so that I could be with you. And the most important thing in my life, I could be with people to share it. There was only a few I could share that with at the university. Kim was one. I'm just so grateful. It's tears of joy, isn't it? It's taken this depression in my life, and I'm so grateful for it, because it kept telling me, you misunderstand life. You need to change the way you're thinking, feeling, perceiving, relating, and acting. It's there. Keep looking. It will come to you. I will not let you down. And when it happens to you, because you've suffered so much, it'll hit you like an explosion. For some people, they get this, and they've known this all along. One of my colleagues is, I think she may be on this call, Mary Aguilera. She was a student of mine, has become a friend and a colleague, and I invited her to be here. She may be on here, but some people like her, she's known this all her life, and people couldn't understand why, when she had a miscarriage and the baby died, everyone was grieving, and somehow, and everybody thought it was so strange that she was not grieving. that that she knew she was fine, the baby was fine. There was something inside her that was okay with whatever happens, that it doesn't matter what happens. It's like what Myron talks about. He says there's something at some level where it's hard to put a finger on, but life can be trusted. We just know life can be trusted, and it has freed us to be all, it has freed our body and our mind to be all they can be. When we know we are this unchanging, eternal presence, it frees the body and mind from being, of needing to protect itself all the time so that it can be all that they can be. It's so beautiful. It's ironic almost that when we know what we are, and that we're changeless and timeless, that the body is now free to be what it's called to be. So she knew that from very early in life. And there's been tragedies in her life that at some level she's been undisturbed by. There are two huge problems that our mind has with this. And one of them is this. Why is it that if my awareness and your awareness are one single awareness, why can't I know your thoughts? That's a big one the mind has. Remember, our mind has no access to these glimpses, right? It only knows objects. So the mind is concerned about this one single reality idea. Yeah. So my response to my mind was, because that was an objection that it had. I said, we're familiar with this every night when we go to sleep and we dream. We believe we're this body mind in this dream character interacting with other dream characters, not knowing what they're going to say to us, being surprised by what they do and say in this landscape. And then we wake up and we go, oh, I was both sides of the conversation. I was actually orchestrating the whole thing. Not only that, but I was creating the landscape in which it was taking place in. That it's not foreign to us, this idea of both knowing and not knowing simultaneously. In the daytime, we don't know what's going to happen next. In fact, it would be boring if we knew what was going to happen next and what the other person was going to say to us, right? So we're living simultaneously, not knowing, being surprised by what happens, and yet knowing at another level, we're creating it all. That this aware presence that we are is creating it. It's why Eckhart Tolle says, whatever life brings you, treat it as if you chose it. And live from that, and you will notice a profound change in your experience of life. Whatever life brings is a gift. It's what Rumi was saying. And he says, welcome whatever shows up at the door, for it has been sent to you. It has been sent to you as a, what does that last line go? It is as
a gift from beyond.
These are messengers, or what do you call them? These are messengers sending us as their gifts from beyond.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that happens to us, the depression, the Ravens losing last week, these are, your attachment to them is exactly telling you you're holding this wrong. That's why you're suffering. Wake up. That's what Francis was telling that woman from Denmark that was in the dark night of the soul. First, recognize that it's not dry, that when you're reading Jean Klein, the joy, the causeless joy that you experience in hearing those words, in reading those words. And just start applying them. You're just attached to what is happening in life. Let go and live this. Stop the talk and live it. Walk the walk. The walk that you live are the experiments that you're doing, where you're asking life, is there really one single reality and this awareness, that reality? Is it true, this extraordinary possibility? To live it and keep testing it. And as we keep testing it by living, there are these serendipitous events that keep happening, like Kim welcoming me, inviting me to be with you at the very time my teaching was being taken away. We keep having these serendipitous events that tell you you're on the right track. Yes. Keep going. It stabilizes you in your thinking, feeling, relating, and acting because they become aligned with this new understanding. It's so beautiful, isn't it? I mean, you all are living like that. That's why I love being here, because you've all been living this this is a celebration, isn't it? Being together. Here's one other of the objections. How can there be only one single reality when awareness is thought-like and the world is matter-like? It's inconceivable. And yet, if you talk to a physicist about matter, it's really interesting, isn't it? What is matter? And he'll tell you, or she'll tell you the normal stuff until you do the Socratic method and you keep asking, yes, but. And finally they come to the end and they say, they get to quantum physics, and they begin to say, I have no freaking idea. there is this stuff called there is as Einstein said, spooky interaction from a distance. There is stuff coming in and out of existence. Matter is coming in and out of existence from this somewhat quantum field or a vacuum or something like this. And when we go to measure it, we can't tell where it's located if we're measuring its velocity, and we can't tell its velocity when we see it. And then it keeps changing back from particles to waves and then disappearing, and we don't have a clue. It's a mystery to us. Matter is a mystery. Now let's go over to the side of consciousness. So here's consciousness or awareness, that which is perceiving thoughts. Thoughts are very different than consciousness. They have a beginning and an end. They're perceived. Awareness is never perceived. It perceives. It has never perceived itself as an object. It comes and goes. Awareness never comes and goes. It's of a totally different realm than thoughts. It's a mystery. It's a mystery, and the world is a mystery. Matter is a mystery. And begin get to this place of, and here's what my teacher did with me that was so beautiful. He said, assume that there's two realities, me, awareness, and the world. And they seem to be so different. But yet, if those are two absolutely independent realities, they can't interact, can they? Right? If they're two independent realities, they can't and yet we know we perceive the world. So there must be some larger reality that encompasses both consciousness and matter, consciousness and the world. But what is it that is then hearing these words right now? It's truly this ultimate reality that encompasses both, right? The ultimate reality is what is truly hearing these words right now, isn't it? And that is the reality of the world, isn't it? Do you follow that? Do you follow the logic of that? If these two separate realities, if they're not separate because they interact, so there has to be a larger reality that encompasses both. But what is truly hearing these words right now is that larger reality, which means awareness is that larger reality, the reality of the world, as well as the reality of the whirlpool of that individuation. It's really fascinating. So as the mind, so part of the process in the non-dual teaching is to deal with the objections of the mind until the mind can go quiet. The mind can't go there, but at least can go quiet and say, okay, my objections have been handled and I rest my case. I rest. And it's like somebody described it as the mind is like the dog that follows around the master. But when the master goes to his bedroom or her bedroom at night, the dog cannot enter the door. The dog is always there as a servant of the master. The mind and body are the servant of the master. The mind is the servant of the master, but it can never know the master because the mind can only know objects. So the mind needs to be satisfied so that it frees us to embrace more fully the possibility, this extraordinary possibility of an underlying oneness to reality. And we are that underlying oneness. What an extraordinary thing to live from that possibility. That was the gift I was given. And it was given by that very, very same presence that I am. Let me read a prayer. So you can have one single reality and you still can pray. Because the one, like Meister Eckhart used to say, Meister Eckhart used to say, if there's only one prayer you ever pray and it's thank you, that would be enough. The one giving thanks and the one receiving the thanks are the same. Here's a prayer of Rupert Spear at the beginning of a non-dual prayer at the beginning of his book called, end of his first chapter of his book, The Heart of Prayer. Praise be to God, naked being, who wears the universe as its body and whose name is I. Praise be to God, the I amness of all selves, although there are no selves, and the isness of all things, although there are no things. Praise be to God, who conceals himself in existence and reveals himself as being. Praise be to God, who shrouds herself in time and who proclaims herself in eternity. Praise be to God, whose movement is our longing and whose rest is peace itself. Praise be to God, to whom the world is its song and silence its prayer.
Well, really appreciate everyone being here. Rick, thank you so much for sharing your journey, but also bringing us along in a different way through today's process. Really appreciate it. And it's been a wonderful experience to be with each and every one of you and to listen very deeply. Thank you. Thank you so much.